Okay, can you guys see my screen? Okay, right. Now see, the discussion what we had yesterday was related to the layer 2 level of redundancy as well as aggregating multiple interfaces so that we can have maximum throughput. So by bundling multiple interfaces together, we will be able to have some aggregated throughput. If I have two interfaces and each of gigabit Ethernet, then I can have an aggregated throughput of 2 Gbps. Even if one of the interface goes down, still I'll be having a redundant interface. That's not a problem for me. So that is where the layer 2 redundancy we were talking about. Okay. Now I'm just going to be taking through a different discussion now. Say I have a switch. I also have another switch like this. Let's keep like this. Multiple switches are there. Then I'm trying to form an ether channel between them. Because of that, redundancy and aggregated throughput can be possible. But anyway, the router is going to be allowing me to get connected to the external world or anywhere. So I need to have a layer 3 device, right? So this layer 3 device is going to be helping me to get connected to the external world. Now how do they be connecting? So assuming that I'm just going to be connecting to the switch number 1. Let's have no VLANs configured on it, okay? Just for the discussion, right? Now what happens, people who are connected on the downstream switches, they're all going to be having an IP address configured. Let's assume. So multiple PCs are there, right? So the IP address associated to the router internal interface is 10.1.1.1/24. The internal PCs are also going to be having an IP address in 10.1.1.0/24. At the same time, see, within the network they can communicate even without the router, but if they wanted to go out of your physical network, your internal network, you have to go to the router. How do you configure it? By having a default gateway configured as what? 10.1.1.1. So what is the meaning of default gateway? If you don't have any route to reach any of the destinations, don't drop the packets there itself. Send it to 10.1.1.1. That is the meaning of it. Who is 10.1.1.1? My router is the 10.1.1.1. Once the packet is received by the router could forward the packet to the external world. Okay, well and good. Now my point is, if something goes wrong with this router, what would happen? We will not be in a position to access the internet. Let's be the router is up, but what happens if this link fails? We don't have a redundant link, right? If the link fails, still we are going to be disconnected. If the router fails, still we are going to be disconnected. There is a way that we will be in a position to have a redundant router. Because of that, the communication is going to be ensured even if one of the link or router fails. So what I do is I'll be having two routers into it. See here, what I'm trying to do, I have a router 1 connected to switch 1. I can have a router 2 maybe connecting to the same switch or maybe connecting to the other switch. It purely depends on requirement. Now the point is, even though they have R1 and R2 connected to the same switched network, they need to be configured with an IP address. So the router 1 side, I'm configuring the IP address as 10.1.1.1. On the router 2 side, can I configure 10.1.1.1 as well? Is that possible? Is that possible to have two devices configured with the same IP address? Any possibility on that? No. ஆமாங்க. தெரியலையம்மா, ஒரு நிமிஷம் திரும்ப ஸ்டாப் பண்ணிட்டு வேணா திரும்ப ஷேர் பண்ணுறேன். For all of them same, Gopi, for you also the same? I just disconnected and reconnected. Okay. Is that visible now? கார்த்திக் மியூட் பண்ணுங்க. உங்கள் சைடில் இருந்தால் நான் ப்ரொடியூஸ் ஆகிற சவுண்ட் நாய்ஸ் உங்கள்கிட்ட இருந்தால் நிறைய நார்மலாக பேசும்போது கூட எப்போ பேசணுமோ whenever you wanted to ask something, don't worry, you can unmute and you can speak. See, now what I have done, I have router number 2. My question is, can I configure the same IP address as like R1 to R2 as well? It is not allowed. No two devices in a network can have the same IP addresses configured. Then it will cause something called as IP conflict. Why this conflict is coming up? If I don't have a unique identification, then obviously how the data traffic can come to me? If you and me are having the same email address, somebody is sending an email to the same address, you will receive or I will receive. That becomes the complication, right? So that's why the IP addresses cannot be duplicated within a network. So I have two devices, they have to be having two different IP addresses. So instead of 10.1.1.2, one for router 1, I'm just going with 10.1.1.2. Now what happens on the entire devices which is part of this network, right? They are going to be configuring with a single default gateway. You don't have the choice of configuring two default gateways on the NPCs. That is not possible. You understand what I'm saying? Can I configure two default gateways for the PCs? No, it's not possible. Let's say only one default gateway can be configured, not two default gateways. So in that case, if I configure 10.1.1.1 as my default gateway, then what will happen? As long as the router 1 is up and running, the traffic can go over there. If 10.1.1.2 is the default gateway I configure, then as long as 10.1.1.2 is available, then the traffic can go out via that. But we are talking about the redundancy. Redundancy means what? If something goes wrong with one, the other one has to take over. That is the concept of redundancy. So that is where we are going to be discussing something called FHRP. FHRP stands for First Hop Redundancy Protocol. Right? Redundancy Protocol. So there are many of the first hop redundancy protocols are there. The first one is HSRP. The second one is VRRP. The third one is GLBP. Right. Out of these three, HSRP and GLBP are Cisco proprietary protocols, whereas VRRP is industry standard. What I mean to say, if router 1 and router 2, both of them are Cisco, then you can use any of these routing protocols for the FHRP. Whereas if router 1 is Cisco and router 2 is a different vendor product, it could be Juniper, it could be any product, it could be from any product. Now in that case, I have to take the industry standard protocol with respect to the redundancy, only then they can understand, right? See, if all of you people, all 3 members or 4 members can understand Tamil, then I can simply speak in Tamil, right? But one of the guy don't understand the Tamil. That's the reason we are speaking in a common language which is understandable for all of them, right? So which is English. Same way, HSRP and GLBP are the two languages understandable only for the Cisco devices. But if you have a different vendor product, it's not that it has to be Cisco, any other vendor product. I have 2 different vendor products. On that, can I make use of HSRP or GLBP? We cannot assure you that. So you have to take a standard protocol, a standard language. Only then they'll be in a position to communicate with each other. Okay? When it comes, see, our discussion is going to be limited with your HSRP. We are not going to be talking about VRRP. We are not going to be talking about GLBP. Okay? So now my point is, how this communication is going to be established? Whiteboard தெரியுதா? தெரியுது இல்லையா? ஒன்றும் ப்ராப்ளம் இல்லை. எரேஸ் பண்ணிட்டேன் இப்போ. ஓகே. இப்போ தான் எரேஸ் பண்ணேன். ஜஸ்ட் நவ் எரேஸ்ட். ஓகே. ரைட், ஓகே. கொஞ்சம் டைம் எடுத்து வர்றது போல இருக்கு. ஸோ ஐ ஹாவ் ரவுட்டர் 1. I also have router 2. And this is connected to my public network or anywhere. It could be anywhere. Okay. Now on the downstream, I have a switch, and router 1 is connecting to the switch. Router 2 is also connecting to the switch. And behind the scene, I have so many PCs are connected. As we had the discussion, what is that? The router 1 and router 2 supposed to be configured with an IP address, a unique IP address. Let me say 10.1.1.2. Router 2, I'm configuring it as 10.1.1.3. This is the IP address I'm configuring. All my internal network PCs are configured with an IP address of 10.1.1.0/24. Some of the IP address, it cannot be 1.2, it cannot be 1.3. Now, what would be the default gateway? Still, there is a question. The moment I enable HSRP, right? The moment I enable HSRP, I have to enable it on both the routers. What will happen is, we will be able to create a virtual router, right? The router, what is the meaning of virtual? Virtual means imaginary. Think like that, right? I have a virtual router. This virtual router will be logically identifying these two interfaces, right? So the virtual router will be logically identifying router 1's internal interface and router 2's internal interface. Since it is a router, even though it is virtual, we have to configure an IP address for the interface. I can configure that IP address as 10.1.1. It can be anything. I'm just telling you an example. Now, all of my internal people, they will have their default gateway as the virtual router's IP address. Because of that, the traffic will be forwarded to the virtual device, not to the physical device. The advantage of going for this, what is the advantage? When I have two routers enabled with the HSRP, one of the router is going to be taking the role of active, the other one is going to be taking the role of standby. The meaning of active is, whichever the device has taken the role of active, who will be responding for the virtual IP address. Whichever the router has taken the role of standby, will be checking the availability of the active router, but it will not be responding for any of the requests. You understand what I'm saying? Do you understand? Okay. So what I'm basically trying to say is, if you have two physical routers and you need to configure the IP addresses for the physical interfaces, at the same time, the virtual router should also be configured with an IP address. The default gateway of your internal PCs will be having the default gateway configured as the virtual router's IP address. So because of that, the router whichever has taken the role of active will be responding for that, even though that interface IP address is entirely different. See, the interface IP address is 10.1.1.2, but the virtual router IP address is 10.1.1.1. Now router 1 can respond for this interface IP as well as for the virtual IP, because he has been taken the role of active. Whereas the standby router can respond for this IP address, but it cannot respond for the virtual IP address because he has taken the role of standby. For any reason, when the router 1 goes down, router 2 can recognize that, right? Router 2 can recognize that. Based on that identification, router 2 will move from standby to active. You understand what I'm saying? You understand? Okay. So what basically we are trying to say is, so this is my active router. Which one? Router 1 is my active router. Router 2 is my standby router. A standby router will continuously monitor the availability of the active router. As long as the active is up and running, I will simply keep silence. Whereas when the active goes down, the standby can identify the unavailability of the active router, and then it can immediately move up its role as active. The moment it becomes the active, he is going to be responsible for responding to the request given to the virtual IP address, right? So to have this to be configured, we have to configure something called as what? An HSRP group ID. So that is the group you need to remember. So how do you make both the routers to be part of the same virtual router? The group number has to be the same. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So which router is going to be taking the role of active? That purely depends on something called as what? A priority. Whichever the router has the highest priority, he will be elected as an active router. When active router is up and running, the standby will not be taking up the role of active, as I said earlier. But let's assume that the active router, this is the router we have configured first. Because of that, it took the active role. The standby router later we have configured. When the router comes up with the HSRP configuration, it looks into the availability of the active. Because there is an active router, I have to take the role of standby. I don't have a choice. Even though the secondary router's configuration or the priority is better. Let's say that the R1 router's priority is 100, R2 router's priority is 110. Even though R2 router has a better priority, because the active router is up and running, the standby router needs to maintain the silence. But provided If you wanted to take the role of active role, whichever the router has the better priority, there is something called as preempt. Preempt, like preempt option. That means it doesn't matter. Okay. Let me check it out. I'm getting bad network quality. I don't know why. Give me a minute. Let me connect through my mobile. And then we will check it out. Is that the problem with? I don't know, I don't have my, I'm not able to connect to my hotspot also. I think my MacBook again got corrupted. I may need to fix it. Let me see whether it is connecting or not. No idea, ma. It's not connecting. Okay, let me try to open up the screen share 1 second. The screen is visible. Wait. It will come up. Eventually, it will come up. Okay, that come. Right. So this is where I'm talking about. You can have the option called as preempt. Whenever the router comes up with a better priority, immediately it will take up the role of active, even though I have the other device which is in the role of active. The advantage is, whenever the router is up and running, the standby can look into the availability of the active. But my point is, even though the router is up, but the uplink is down, now what will happen? Still we may need to find a way to fall back, right? Even though the traffic can come to router 1, right? The router 1 cannot forward the packet to the external world because its upstream link is down. So even in this case, the standby will maintain the silence because the active router is up and running. So what we can do is, we can monitor a specific link, we can monitor the reachability of the IP address. Based on that, we can decrement the, what is it called? The priority value. So when you decrement the priority value, and automatically the other device priority value can be higher, because you have configured the preempt, the standby router can take up the role of active. This is what the concept of HSRP. Is that clear? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, fine then. So of course you will be having something like what some theoretical explanations. You have to be very familiar. And one more thing we need to understand in this, see, as long as the router 1 has taken the role of active, let's say I'm just taking the green color. Okay, now my router 1 was active. I'm writing in green color. Is that visible for you? Near to R1 I rate it's available. Yeah, it's showing. Now see, as long as this guy is active, he was responding for 10.1.1.1, probably he would have replied back from here. Then what would have happened? The MAC address would have been known from this switch, known from this port. Because of that, the switch 1 would have been mapped the MAC address of 10.1.1.1 to this port. Now the switch, our router 2 has taken the role of active because of the unavailability, or because of this link failure, or because of the reachability. what will happen? The switch's MAC address table still will be pointing to the same port to reach 10.1.1.1 or that particular MAC address. So what happens in HSRP, the moment any of the standby router takes up the role of active, immediately they will be sending an ARP packet to announce the reachability of that MAC address via new port. So now the router 2 has taken the role of active. Immediately an ARP message will be sent. The switch will map that MAC address from the older port to the newer port, so that without any issue the traffic can be flowing through. So this particular ARP is called as GARP, gracious ARP or gratuitous ARP. However you want, you can say that. What is it called? Gracious ARP or gratuitous ARP. That is the meaning of it. Okay? Is that clear? Okay. Right. Then there are certain other small topics are also there. Let me try to finish them. It would be easy for us. Now, as we have seen the WAN connectivity options, what is the purpose of WAN? Because we have two different LANs. LAN is going to be very specific about the devices which are located in a specific area. So I have two different LANs. I would like to have the WAN connection so that my LAN 1 and LAN 2 could talk to each other. So I have LAN 1, I have LAN 2. They have to be communicating with each other. Can I lay a cable? Of course, it couldn't be possible. So that's where we are taking the help of the WAN connectivity options like your packet switch, the circuit switch. That's what we have seen. But my point is, when you have a public network called as internet, there is a way that using the internet the LANs can communicate with each other? Quite possible. See, I'm connected to internet. LAN 1 is connected to internet. LAN 2 is also connected to internet. Can they communicate via the internet? Yes, it is possible. But the problem is, if the LAN 1 and LAN 2 are communicating over the internet, internet is known as a public medium. Because of that, any communication you transmit over the internet could be seen by anybody, because it is going to be happening in clear text, and moreover it is happening through the public network. So what we have to do is, we have a public network. Over the public network, we wanted to establish a secure tunnel. Because of that, even though the traffic is flowing through that internet, because it is traveling through the tunnel, nobody could understand what is the set of data which is being exchanged between LAN 1 and LAN 2, which we call it as a VPN. So VPN, there are so many types of VPNs are there. There are popular one like what? GRE, generic routing encapsulation. It provides only the tunneling one, but there is no protection, there is no cryptography. Whereas if I take the help of IPsec, then the tunnel is also there. Data confidentiality, integrity and authenticity are also there. When it comes to IPsec VPN, and who is responsible for establishing the tunnel between LAN 1 and LAN 2, whether it is GRE or IPsec, doesn't matter. This is going to be configured by the administrators of our organization. So if a new site comes up and we want to establish a tunnel, we have to establish the tunnel, and the service provider is not at all responsible for anything. The only responsibility of the service provider is reachability of the IP addresses. The rest of the tunnel establishment process, if something goes wrong, what needs to be addressed, the provider will not at all involve in any kind of IPsec or GRE tunnel configurations with customer. The service provider's involvement is zero when it comes to IPsec and GRE. That's why we call these type of VPN tunnels as enterprise managed VPNs. Who is managing this VPN? This is being managed by whom? The company, whomever is having the internet connection. On contrary, we also have the provider who could be involved in managing this kind of a VPNs, and most probably we will have something called as what? Where is my mouse pointer? There is something called as what? MPLS VPN. When it comes to MPLS VPN, the complete involvement with respect to provisioning any site and every site is going to be happening only through the help of the provider. ஒன்றும் எழுதலை, ஸோ அதனால் ஒன்றும் பிரச்சனை இல்லை. பட் இருந்தாலும் திரும்ப கனெக்ட் பண்ணுறேன். ரொம்ப சிம்பிளாக பேட் நெட்வொர்க் குவாலிட்டின்னு சொல்லிடுறாமா, அவ்வளோதான் மெசேஜே வருது. அது என்ன பிரச்சனைன்னு தெரியல, பார்க்கணும். அது என் மிஷினில் தான் ப்ராப்ளம், இன்டர்நெட்லாம் ப்ராப்ளம் இல்லை. இன்றைக்கி காலையிலேருந்தே இப்படி தான் இருக்குது. நாளைக்கு நான் வரும்போது வேறு லேப்டாப் தான் எடுத்துகிட்டு வரணும்னு நினைக்கிறேன் கிளாஸ்க்கு. தெரியுதா? இப்போ இது மட்டும் தான் எழுதியிருக்கேன் MPLSன்னு சொல்லிட்டு. தெரியுதா? ஒன்றே ஒன்று தான் எழுதியிருக்கேன். ரைட்டா? ஸோ இப்போ MPLS-ஐ பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் இருக்கிற அட்வான்டேஜ் என்ன? வாட் இஸ் த அட்வான்டேஜ் ஆஃப் MPLS மீன்ஸ் the circuit which is getting terminated will be the responsibility of, right? So what I have, so the circuit termination will be the responsibility of the service provider. The tunnel establishment is going to be the responsibility of the service provider. Routing the traffic between all these networks are also going to be responsibility of the service provider. Whereas the company, the LAN, doesn't have any idea about it, right? They are simply going to be asking, my network is down, can you please tell me what is the problem? Whereas the provider is going to be involving in implementing the complete set of VPN. That's why we call MPLS as provider managed VPNs. There are two different types of VPNs, okay? What is that? Enterprise managed VPN and provider managed VPN. The enterprise managed VPN, the customer is responsible for establishing the tunnel between their sites. Everything is going to be under the responsibility of the customer. When it comes to enterprise, when it comes to provider managed VPN, the customer no need to do anything. The complete set of work is going to be taken care by the provider. So because of that, we call that kind of VPNs as provider managed VPNs. One of that VPN is MPLS, the other one is VPLS. Like this we have a couple of one. The key difference between MPLS and VPLS is VPLS is a layer 2 circuit, whereas MPLS is layer 2.5 or layer 3 circuit. That's how we used to say that. So typically layer 2.5 is where your MPLS is operating. Okay, so that is what the provider and enterprise managed VPNs. Any questions? You can ask me now. ஆமாங்க, அதே மாதிரி தான் VPN வச்சு பண்ணணுங்க. ஒரு ரவுட்டர் போட்டுக்கோங்க, ரவுட்டர் இன்டர்நெட்டாக அஸ்யூம் பண்ணிக்கோங்க. And then you have to establish the tunnel. Tunnel-லாம் நீங்கள் கான்ஃபிகர் பண்ண மாட்டீங்க. Those are all going to be covered in your CCNP security and CCNP enterprise. This is CCNA, right? A basic overview of these topics will be covered for you. Okay. 1 minute, my laptop got disconnected. I don't know why I keep disconnecting from the network. Probably I may need to use a wireless dongle. The wireless card might have been corrupted. Not sure. Every 2 minutes and 3 minutes it's getting disconnected. Right, so that's what the point you need to understand with respect to the provider managed and enterprise managed VPNs. Okay, right. Okay, there are a couple of other things we have to say what in the monitoring part and all those things I will tell you by the other class, so that it will be easy for you. One more thing I need to discuss, which is called this the concept of virtualization. Now what is this virtualization? Small theoretical portions I'm trying to complete. Okay, a virtualization. Now what is this virtualization? See, in earlier days, okay, if you need a web server, you need to have a physical server. This is where I have my web server posted. And you need a mail server, you need to have an email server, a separate physical server. Like this, for every application you want them to be accessible and you want them to be hosted, you need to dedicate a web server, a physical server, because In those days, provisioning the resources were too complicated and were limited. Like what? See, even I am working from an era where we used to work with 4 MB of RAM. 4 MB of RAM. RAM oda size verum 4 MB. Ipo we have 16 GB, 32 GB on the laptops itself. Right? So by that time we had certain limitations and restrictions that provisioning the amount of resources on the devices. Nowadays, if you see the servers, right? Even there is a product from Cisco which is called as UCS, on which you can go for TBs of RAM. I'm not saying that 1 TB, 2 TB. It can go TB like that. It can go 6 TB, 8 TB of RAM. You can go for it. So the provisioning of resources is not complicated. That led to a different concept altogether. What is that? If you go to a hardware, we have a lot of resources, right? And those resources can be used for emulating multiple devices together. For example, like we have a physical switch, right? We have a physical switch. By creating the VLANs, what is that we are trying to do? VLAN number 10 and VLAN number 1. Logically, we are slicing the switch into multiple switches, right? So it's a lot. That's why we call this as VLAN. What stands for VLAN? Virtual LAN. So you are virtualizing the switch into multiple switches. Same way, now what I want is the physical server can be logically sliced and the resources can be provisioned according to the requirement of the application, what is going to be hosted on it. Let's say one portion I'm going to be hosting web server, let me say 16 GB or 32 GB of RAM and 2 processors for that. I can also have one more virtual machine. We call this as what? A virtual machine. This can be hosted with amount of RAM like 32 GB of RAM and 8 core processors. I'm allocating. I can do this one. It's quite possible. How this is going to be done? Through the help of something called a hypervisor. Do you understand what I'm saying? Through something called as what? A hypervisor. Hypervisor. புரியுதா hypervisor சொல்றது? So the hypervisor allows us to emulate the virtual machines on top of the physical server. So whatever the resources that you want, you will be able to allocate through the help of what? Through the help of what? So every virtual machine would require RAM. Every virtual machine would require the interfaces. Every virtual machine would require the CPUs. As a hardware, you have lot of resources allocated on that. Because of that, you will be able to allocate the resources for each and every virtual machine according to their requirement. For example, if you are buying some 2000 square feet of a flat, right? So you have the control on the 2000 square feet and then you decide how many bedrooms you want and what is the size of each and every bedroom and what would be the size of your hall and what would be the size of your kitchen. You have the control, right? So, but you cannot slice your rooms in such a way that you can have multiple bedrooms and it can go beyond the scope of your 2000 square feet. Same way, whatever the resources which are available on the physical hardware, based on that you will be able to virtualize it. Okay? Based on that you will be able to virtualize it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that clear? Right. So the hypervisor helps us to virtualize the machines. But my point is, each and every virtual machine can have a different operating systems on it, as like a physical server. So if I have one physical server, I can have Windows on it. Can I? Yes, I can. On the other machine, I can go for Linux. And the other server, I can go for CentOS. On the other server, I can go for Unix. I can do anything I want. The similar kind of an approach could be possible on these virtual machines as well. So each and every virtual machine can have their own operating system. We call those operating systems as what? A guest operating system. According to your need, whatever you want, you will be able to achieve it. You understand what I'm saying? So storage can be virtualized, memory can be virtualized, CPU can be virtualized, NIC can be virtualized. So within a host, you have different types of virtualization softwares. So there are virtualization also, the hypervisor also, we have two different types of virtualization options. One is called as a type 1, the other one is called as type 2. What I mean to say, you have the type 1, which is also called as a bare metal system, whereas type 2 is called as a hosted system. Let me write it down so that it will be easy for you. I lost my mouse pointer. Here it is. Type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is called as a bare metal. Type 2 is called as hosted. Can you see them, what I'm writing? Type 1 is bare metal, type 2 is hosted. The difference is, if I have a hardware, then on top of that this hypervisor can be installed. No other operating systems are required to run this hypervisor. Whereas the type 2, I have a hardware, I need to have an operating system. On top of this, the hypervisor can be installed. For example, let me open up my VM. I'll show you. Give me a minute, it's starting up. See, I'm having this virtual machines. I'm trying to open up this virtual machines. I don't know why it's not coming up. It's coming up. See here, this is my virtual machine. Okay. On this VMware, I can have multiple virtual machines running. Each and every virtual machine I can run it. But to have this VMware Fusion, for Mac it is Fusion, for Windows it is called as VMware Workstation. Okay. My point is, if you have this virtual machine and you need this application to be running, only then you will be able to create the VMs. But if at all this application needs to run, you need to have the Mac to be run, Mac operating system needs to be running. So this VMware, which is a hypervisor, which is running on top of my MacBook, right, Mac operating system, Mac OS. Whereas the bare metal, I don't need to have any general purpose operating system, because the hypervisor itself is an operating system. So the popular one is VMware ESXi, that is what the type 1. Whereas here we can call it as VMware Workstation or VMware Fusion. You can say anything like that. You understand? புரியுதா என்ன சொல்றேன்ட்டு? bare metal அதுக்கு தான் ஆப்ரேட்டிங் சிஸ்டமே வேண்டான்ட்டனே. அப்புறம் என்ன, அதுவே ஆப்ரேட்டிங் சிஸ்டம் தான். ESXi ஆப்ரேட்டிங் சிஸ்டம் தான். நோ இல்லை இப்போ தானே சொன்னேன், விண்டோஸ்னா ஒர்க் ஸ்டேஷன், மேக்னா ஃபியூஷன். Right. So I'll give you another architecture of your VMware hypervisor. Assume that we have a physical server. Okay, this is our physical server, right? So we have the hardware components like NIC, like CPUs, all of them are there. Now on top of that, we have this hypervisor is running. Hypervisor itself is an operating system if it is type 1. Now what is that we can do is, we can have multiple VMs, VM1, VM2, like this you can have n number of VMs, VM3, like this you can have multiple VMs. Now on top of every virtual machine you can have a separate operating system, and then you can have the application installed on it. In VM2 you can have an operating system, you can also have the application. In VM3 you can have an operating system, you can have the application installed on it. But how do they be connected? Because I have something called as a virtual switch within. We know the functionality of the physical switch, right? If you have a physical switch, physical machines can be connected. See, this is my NIC, okay? This is the hardware NIC. This is going to be connected to your physical switch. Whereas this is a virtual machine. To connect to the physical switch, there are certain procedure. What do? The VMs are going to be connected to the virtual switch, and then the virtual switch will be connected to the physical NIC, and then the physical NIC can be connected to the physical switch. This is how the architecture will go on. So because of that, the VMs can communicate with the physical network also. Same way, the physical network can also communicate with the virtual machines as well. You getting my point? Is that clear? Okay, this is what the virtualization fundamentals we have to be familiar with. Now the same thing is what happening on your cloud also. What is that happening? The cloud is nothing but, now what is the benefit of cloud? Whatever the data center you had, let me say that I have a data center. This data center is going to be hosted with multiple servers. So depending on your requirement, you would have purchased multiple servers, and then using the hypervisor you could virtualize them. But you may need to procure the connectivity to the data center, redundant connectivity. Like that we have to go for it, multiple data centers, because if something goes wrong with one of the physical data center, still we have the accessibility to the secondary data center. Instead of going for the physical data center, everything can be done on the cloud. The cloud, like your Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, right? GCP we used to call them as, then Alibaba, Microsoft Azure. Like this, there are so many providers. They have their physical data center hosted in different parts of the world, and they are accessible over the internet. So as an end user, what I have to do is I can connect whichever the service I want. I can go to Azure, I can go to AWS, I can go to Google Cloud, or I can also go to Alibaba. My point is I can connect to any of these Azures. Of course, it's going to be a payment service. I can have my own data center gets created in any place I want. See, Azure have a presence in India, UK, US, Middle East, Australia. Like this, they have their presence. So if I wanted to build a data center in US, I no need to buy or rent out a physical space over there, because Azure has a presence in US. So I can have a data center via Azure in US in matter of second. If I want a server now, I can have the server now. If I don't want the server now, I can immediately decommission it. Then what is the benefit of it? See, whatever the duration I have used the resources, only for that I'll be paying. I have two servers running for 24/7. I have to pay only for 2 servers for the total period of time I have used it. But I have to increase the resources. As of now I was using 16 GB. Now I would like to go for 32 GB. Can I do that? Matter of seconds you can do that. You understand? So at the same time, I can also have the data center in UK and Australia. I can interconnect them. Whatever the physical data center I was doing, whatever the thing I was doing with the physical data center, the same thing could be possible with the cloud also. The benefit is, if I'm going to be having only one single web server, instead of looking for the service provider and buying the servers and hosting on them, I can simply go to this kind of a cloud providers. I can run a virtual web server. I can run a web server, and the resources can also be provisioned initially as low as possible, and later I can go for, as I'm getting more of load, I can go for increasing the resources. Whenever I'm increasing the resource, only from that point I have to pay for the extra resource. The moment I turn it off, I decommission, immediately there won't be any billing for me. So whatever the services, whatever the firewall, whatever the security measures I expect, all of them could be possible through the cloud. So if I'm a mobile application developer, I need a platform, right? So I need a platform to test it out. Can I buy it? You don't need to buy it, because the platform you may be using for a couple of days in a week. So what I can do, I can build the platform within your cloud, then do all your testing, then decommission it. Only for the period of time you have been utilizing the resources, you have to pay for it. Rest of the things, that's it, over. You don't need to buy, you don't need to sell, you don't need to install, you don't need to maintain. Even the customers can be given with a URL. Okay, this is where I have hosted the application, you can go ahead and check. So when it comes to the cloud, virtualization also comes into picture, because a physical data center is getting logically virtualized into multiple data centers, and every data center is going to be hosting some customers' resources on it. Do you understand what I'm saying? அது ஓகேம்மா. இப்போ நான் பேசுனது புரிஞ்சுதா? ஸ்க்ரீனை மட்டும் பார்க்குறீங்களா, நான் பேசுறது கேட்குறீங்களா? நான் எதுவும் எழுதலையா அதுக்கப்புறம்? I don't know. Still it's not shared. Let's wait for a while. disconnected. Every now and then it's disconnecting. That's the problem. Hope now you are able to see the screen. Okay. So this is what we need to understand with respect to certain things. Okay. Fine. Okay. There are certain other things also there we have to discuss. We will see certain things by tomorrow. I think ఇదివరకు పురిదా గోపి అర్థమవుతుందా మీకు ఏం చెప్తానని ఓకే కార్తిక్ అండ్ సతీష్ புரியுதுங்களா